Good morning, guys. Yeah, in yesterday's class, I was talking about importance of distributed application, importance of integration layer in consumer and producer application. Consumer integration layer of consumer is called what? Stub. Integration layer of what? Producer is called skeleton. Like this, we discussed multiple points, right? Okay. Definitely, we discussed what? Multiple points. Now, it's a high time to discuss what? Then we discussed problems with RMI, problems with EZAB. We found various advantages with what? Web services. We have two types of web services, SOAP-based web services and what? RESTful. In SOAP-based web services, we are having a what? XML as global format for a data exchange, right? XML as global format for what? Data exchange. This is what we discussed. But that XML is a SOAP protocol based complex XML. Is not that much easy XML, guys. It's a very complex XML, right? So we have something called what? RESTful web services where we need to deal with what? XML and JSON, right? Where we need to deal with what? XML and what? JSON. Okay. Fine. So today we will discuss how to deal with what? RESTful web service. One thing you remember blindly, no service registry in RESTful web service. Consumer, producer. Producer is having business method. They are technically called endpoints. In controller class of MVC, handler methods, similar to that, here also methods are there. They are called endpoint. And every endpoint is identified with its URL, request mode, okay, parameters. And these three details, which are called endpoint details, will be passed to what? Consumer. And consumer generates the request, endpoint execute, response goes to consumer. No registry in the middle. It's a direct communication. So that's why RESTful architecture is what? Consumer producer architecture. That's it. Consumer producer architecture. Okay, that is each provider application is called one REST API. One REST API can have multiple business method called endpoints. Can have what? Multiple business method called multiple endpoints. Got the point, my dear? Yeah. Multiple business methods called what? Multiple what? Endpoints. That's it. Okay. Fine. Okay. Today, let us focus more on what? RESTful web service. Open this. What's your batch code? 719. What is there? Spring Boot REST. Different types of web services we are talking, right? RESTful web service, guys. REST is not a protocol. REST is the mechanism or architecture representing the state of web component in HTTP request and HTTP response. Representational state transfer. Okay. It's not protocol. Representational state transfer. State means data. So along with the request and response, data will be transferred. No protocol is involved. And the data can be transferred in the form of two things. XML, JSON, if needed, plain text also. You can pass plain text also, right? Basically, XML, JSON also text only, but a formatted. Only the thing is, it's a formatted text. Okay. Allows to send data in both what? Global format. Both global format, XML and JSON. Directly as request body, also as response body. No schema is involved. No protocol is involved while constructing the data. XML, extensible markup language. To convert XML tags data to Java object, unmarshalling and reverse marshalling, we use what? JAX-B API. What is this? Java architecture for XML binding. JSON. JavaScript object notation, nothing but what? JavaScript. The process of converting Java object data to JSON content, key value pairs is called serialization, and reverse is called what? Deserialization. Reverse is called deserialization. Got my point, my dear? Yeah. Java data representation, JavaScript data representation. String name Raja, varlet name Raja. Int age 30, varlet age 30. Here what? Customer object. What is there? Customer object. Varlet cust. CNO CNAME bill amount. Okay. CNO CNAME what? Bill amount. We are ready with this. Here is my Java object. Here is my what? This. Okay. And a flower bracket open closing represents what? Document in JSON. Square bracket open represents what? Array. Array or collection in JSON. No separate treatment for collections, guys. For collections also it will use what? For collections also it will use what? Square bracket opening and what? Closing only. Square bracket opening and what? Closing only. That's good. Fine. So yeah, RESTful web service is all about two things, guys. Okay. Identifying every service or method or operation of provider application with its URL, and consumer uses those URL to consume services of the provider application. No service is required. Every business method or REST operation endpoint of RESTful service, REST API is identified with what? Four details. URL, request path, request mode and parameter. URL means base URL. Request path on the top of method will write path, na? That one. Endpoint, each endpoint path. Mode, get, post, all this stuff. Next one, parameters. Only the thing is, we then out of 9 modes, 5 modes we use for business operation. In web application, we use only 2 modes. After all, browser is the client, browser can send get and post mode request, right? But here client is what? Another application, and they can generate 5 modes of request. No SOAP protocol is involved because consumer and provider sends what? Consumer and provider sends and receives the data as the XML JSON data without applying any protocol. Without applying any protocols. Is that clear, my dear? Come on. Yes. Yeah. Java object to JSON document serialization. JSON document to Java object deserializing. For that one, we have JSON APIs are not there. Okay. But here avoid the confusion. In IO stream, serialization is different. Deserialization is different. In IO stream, it's all about converting object data into what? Bits and bytes. That is called serialization. Converting bits and bytes back to object is deserialized. At IO streams, you might have studied serialization and deserialization. There we make class implementing serializable interface. Come on. Yeah. In IO stream, the process of converting Java object data into bits and bytes is called what? Serialization. And reverse is called deserialization. For this serialization, we need what? Serializable Java object. The object whose class implements what? Java.io.serializable interface. For serialization, for serialization of JSON environment, we don't need any serializable object. JSON serialization, nothing but what? Converting Java object data into what? JSON document. Any normal Java object is what? Sufficient. For IO stream serialization, we need serializable object. For JSON serialization, we can take any normal Java object. Are you getting my point? Okay, IO stream serialization and deserialization is nowhere related to what? This. Are you getting my point, my dear? Come on. Yeah. JSON is lightweight compared to what? XML to represent the data and also to describe the data. Are you comfortable, my dear? Come on, everyone. Yes. Yeah. JSON is lightweight compared to what? XML. Tell me. This is XML. Lot of open closing tags are there now, guys. This is JSON, my dear. This is JSON. CNO 1001, CNAME Raja, bill amount 90.77, all this stuff, right? Yeah. Here, compared to data, the structure is more like what? Compared to data, a lot of decorations are there, open tag, closing tag, all this stuff. Here, structure and data both are in balance now, boss. Keys and values. Okay, it gives structured data having relationship among the data members, but bit heavy environment. Gives structured data having relationship among the data members in what? Lightweight environment, right? RESTful web service is not based on what? SOA. Service oriented architecture. It is based on what? Consumer producer architecture with what? Front controller support. That means no service registry is required here. Do you need any service registry support, guys? No. Do you really need any service registry support, guys? No. Are you getting my point there, guys? Yes. SOAP-based web service architecture is SOA architecture. It is like what? Student getting training from trainer by accessing training details from what? Institute. Institute is like service registry. Trainer is like provider. Student is like what? Consumer. RESTful web service is what? Consumer producer architecture, and it is like what? Student and trainer are in what? Direct interaction. No middleman, guys. Student is directly talking with what, guys? A trainer. Okay. Yeah, a typical RESTful web service looks like this. Search operations controller. Here is what? At the rate REST controller and at the rate request mapping slash search API. Here we have multiple methods having what? Request paths. Multiple method having what? Request path. Report 1, report 2. Simply what is there, guys? Report 1, report 2. Getting my point, my dear? At the rate REST controller is equal to at the rate controller plus response body. At the rate controller plus response body. Everyone getting my point, my dear? Come on. RESTful web service is not based on what? SOA. It is based on consumer producer architecture with what? Front controller support. That means no service registry is what? Required. Service consumer, service producer. Here, direct communication, guys. HTTP request having what? XML or JSON data. Here also what? HTTP response having what? XML or JSON data. Comfortable, my dear? Yes. The provider application in RESTful web service is one MVC controller or what? Advanced controller class having business method mapped with what? Request path. So the consumer application invokes what? Business methods of producer application by sending what? HTTP request based on request URL, request path. So this based on endpoint details, these details will be passed or not there, guys. Right. In RESTful web service, we prefer JSON data a lot compared to what? XML. The service provider can be developed in any language like Java.NET. The service consumer can be developed in any language like what? Java.NET, and it can be any application like Java application, Android application, desktop application. It can be anything or not there. Developer need not to convert generated results into XML or JSON because Spring Boot REST framework take care of that work automatically or not there, guys. Sir, if you want to develop one provider application, you have to take a controller class having at the what annotation? At the rate REST controller annotation. That is must. Okay. REST controller is combination of how many annotations, guys? Two annotations. One is controller, one is response body. What's the advantage of this response body, guys? All endpoints method become capable of what? Sending output directly to consumer without involving view resolver and view component. That's why here no view resolver, view components are required. It's an extension of MVC application only. Okay, because of response body that is coming automatically on the endpoint, endpoints becomes capable of sending generated output directly to consumer application. Okay, without involving view resolver and view component. This is the basic advantage we are having or not there. Basic advantage we are having or not there, guys. Tell me. In RESTful web service, what, guys? In what? RESTful web service. Are you getting my point, my dear? Come on. What is there, guys? In RESTful web service, provider application is controller class, which is identified with its what? Base URL. Business method inside the controller class, also called REST operations or what? Endpoint, are identified with their request path, linked with what? Service class methods. Okay. Note. The consumer application uses provider or what? Provider component or component URL and business method request path in order to invoke the business method. REST operations are what? Endpoints of the provider application. REST operations are what? Endpoints of the provider application. Everyone getting my point, my dear? Yeah, first one. REST controller is provider application. Inside that, endpoints are there. They are identified with what? Base URL plus request mode plus path plus parameters, right? Okay. Every REST controller is called RESTful web service or REST API, REST provider application. The methods in REST controller that are mapped with request path are called what? REST operations are what? Endpoints are business methods. Everyone getting my point, my dear? Yes. Yeah. This is my consumer application. This is my what? Provider application. This is what? HTTP request with XML or JSON data. This is what? HTTP response with what? XML or JSON data. This is request with XML or JSON data. This is what? response with XML or what? JSON data. Everyone getting my point, guys? Yeah. This is a request. This is a response. Post report HTTP. Here what? Headers. Here is blank line. Here what? XML or JSON data. Here is what? Headers, blank line, XML or what? JSON data. Nothing is there, right? Earlier we have seen SOAP-based messages in the body. Now we are seeing what? Raw XML, raw JSON data. No protocol, no schema, nothing is involved. That because of that, though XML is involved, it is lightweight. Are you getting my point, my dear? Yeah. Producer consumer directly talk with HTTP request with XML or JSON data. In the request, XML JSON data without involving any schema or what? Protocol. Response also without XML, any schema or what? Protocol. Super. RESTful web service is nothing. REST API is nothing but provider application, nothing but distribute application, nothing but REST one REST controller, one REST API. One REST controller, one REST API. Clear, guys? And it is very much similar as what? Regular controller. Only the thing is, on the endpoint method, nothing but business method. Response body is automatically applied. Due to this, response can go to what? Consumer without view resolver and view component. See? HTTP request with the JSON body. Yeah. This is head part. This is a head part. Head. This is head na. Blank line. Here are what? Here is what? Request body. This is head. Blank line. And this is what, guys? Body. Everyone getting my point there or not there? This is a head. This is a blank. This is a body. Comfortable, guys? In that one, this comes under initial line. Keys and values. Here is body. Getting my point, my dear? Come on. This is what? This. But observe the body, guys. Observe the body. This is JSON content or not there? Super. This is JSON content or not there, guys? This is JSON content. Header open to closing. Here is what? Blank line. Here is what? Body. Everyone getting my point there, guys? Come on. Super. Array. In the request body, JSON content. Response body, JSON content. Remaining everything same as we discussed, guys. Okay. Okay. Now, it's very clear. No service registry, producer, consumer. Producer is REST controller. Come on. One REST control means one REST API. Another REST control means another REST API. Right, boss? Inside that, how handler methods are there. Here, endpoint methods will be there. Every endpoint is identified with its what? Request path. This is the quite common story or not there, guys? That's quite common and regular story or not there, guys? Come on, everyone. Okay, now the point that I am talking here is REST controller is a normal Java class acting as a Spring Bean, right? REST controller is what? Normal Java class that is acting as what? Spring Bean. Agree with me or not there? Can it take any HTTP request directly? No. So that's why in support to REST controller class, there should be one dispatcher servlet or not there. There must be one dispatcher servlet or not there, guys. Must and should, there should be one dispatcher servlet or not there, guys. Say something, my dear. Come on. Yeah. The service provider in RESTful application is a Java class. and it cannot take what? HTTP request directly. So we put one front controller servlet like what? Dispatcher servlet, action servlet, etc. in the middle. Action servlet in the middle. The special servlet that acts as entry and exit point for all requests and responses is called what? Front controller servlet. What servlet, guys? Front controller servlet. Are you getting my point, my dear? One is client side, one is what? Server side. Here is my what? Dispatcher servlet. Comfortable or not there, guys? Yeah. Client side, service consumer. Server side, what? What is there, guys? Service provider. This is what? Dispatcher servlet. Everyone getting my point there or not there? The service provider in RESTful application is a Java class that cannot take HTTP request directly. So we put one extra thing called dispatcher servlet are not there. Now look at consumer generates HTTP request having XML or JSON data. It cannot take that request directly. That's why we keep one dispatcher servlet with slash URL pattern. We did in REST MVC applications also, right? It takes a request, delegates the request to what? Appropriate endpoint method of provider that will execute. Okay, once executed, it will give a result, whatever the form. It will give that result to front controller dispatcher servlet. Dispatch servlet somehow converts that output into what? JSON or XML, keeps in a response body. That response comes to what? Client application or consumer application. There it will be received and used or not there. There it will be received and used or not there, guys. Yeah, this is going to be number 7. This is going to be number 7. Number 1, consumer generates a request. Dispatcher servlet traps and takes a request. Yes? Okay. That will execute what? Handler method. I mean, say endpoint method. Okay, endpoint method generated output comes to what? Dispatcher servlet. Come on, guys. Dispatcher servlet passes that one to whom, guys? Consumer. Passes that one to what? Consumer. As what? HTTP response. Simply as what? HTTP response. And that response will be displayed over here or not there? The response will be displayed over here or not there, guys? That's good. The provider application in RESTful web service is called REST API, RESTful service, producer service application, and etc. The methods in provider application annotated with what? Triplex mapping annotation are called REST operation, REST endpoint, REST methods, and etc. Can also be called as what? API operations, API endpoints. API operations and what? API endpoint. In Spring Boot application, this front controller is called what? Dispatcher servlet. RESTful web service provider application API. RESTful web service business methods are called what? API endpoints. Are you getting my point there? Same as client server, but server side, because since REST controller is Java class, it cannot take requests and not responses. We are bringing what? One middleman. That middleman is nothing but dispatcher servlet or not. In Java, JAX-RS is technology or API to develop RESTful web service. Whereas Spring REST, REST-easy, RESTless, Jersey, and etc. are the frameworks to support RESTful web services implementation. Clear, my dear? JAX-RS technology, Spring Boot REST, Spring REST, Spring Boot REST. All these are what? Frameworks. Spring REST is given on the top of what? Spring MVC. Spring REST is equal to Spring MVC plus plus. Spring Boot REST is equal to Spring Boot MVC plus plus. Everyone getting my point, my dear? Officially, there is no module called what? Officially, there is no module called REST in Spring or Spring Boot framework. We have only web module which can be used in what? Multiple ways. For developing web application based on MVC architecture, for developing RESTful web service based on what? Consumer producer architecture. No provision to develop a SOAP based web services are not there. For developing web application based on what? MVC architecture. For developing RESTful web services based on what? Consumer producer architecture. No provision to develop what? RESTful. That means what is there, guys? Okay, web module can be used in two angles. Part one, for developing web application, whatever we studied. Part two, RESTful web service. Okay, we don't have separate Spring Boot REST and REST module. Web module only having two parts. Part one for web application development. Part two for what? RESTful web service development. Everyone getting my point there, guys? Yeah. Developing service provider in web service is called what? Developing APIs. Gathering and providing info about required to develop service consumer for invoking service of specific service provider is nothing but what? Providing endpoint details. API development in web service is nothing but service provider or producer application development. Providing all the details of API to consumer is nothing but giving API endpoints to consumer application. The details are like URLs, request path, request mode, parameters, and what? Etc. Parameters and what? Etc. Summary on what? Web services. Okay, how many modes of web service are there? Two. One is SOAP based, other one is what? RESTful web service. One is SOAP based, other one is what? RESTful web service. These are the designing models, guys. Okay, what are the APIs we have, technology we have to develop the web services? Here JAX WS, here JAX RS. What are the frameworks we got? Apache Axis, Apache CFX. Here what? Spring REST, Spring REST easy, RESTless, all this stuff. What is the protocol we have to use, guys? SOAP over HTTP. Here, HTTP with JSON or what? XML. What's the architecture? Given based on SOA, service oriented architecture. Here, what is the architecture? Given based on client server of consumer producer architecture. What is the global data format? XML as global data format. Here, what? XML or JSON as what? Global data format. Next, what is the registry? UDDA registry is required. No UDDA registry is required. Here UDDA registry is required or not required? Required. Here no UDDA registry is required. Everyone getting my point, my dear, or not there? Okay. See, guys. Weather report API. Okay. In this one, this is one first temp. This is one endpoint. This is one endpoint. So this endpoint is mapped with what? W report class temp. This is URL. Mode parameters. Come on. Get expected temperature, city and number of days. After how many days expected temperature will be mapped with this. This is URL. This is mode. These are the parameters. Got it? Yes. API endpoints. Details about API provider services. Every API endpoint is identified with what? Required URL, request mode, and parameters are not there. And parameters are not there, guys. Come on. API development means what? Web service provider application developed either in what? SOAP or in RESTful web service. Got it? Yes. API consumer means what? Web service consumer application development either in what? SOAP or RESTful. Either in what? SOAP or what? RESTful. Is that clear, my dear? Come on, everyone. Yeah. Yeah, this is what we need to focus. Yeah, here is what. weather report, get temperature, get expected temperature. API development means this. Is that clear, my dear? Come on, everyone. The language or technology or framework API that comes in the form of what? Jar file. Having packages with classes, interfaces, enums, and annotations. Acting as what? Base to develop software applications is called what? Library or API. This API is nowhere related to what? Web services. This API is what? Nowhere related to what? Web services. Everyone getting my point, my dear? Come on. Yes. JDBC API means technology or programming API. REST API means distributed application. Don't confuse. Two types of APIs are there. REST API means web services, distributed application. Technology API, framework API means just libraries. So don't compare libraries with what? REST APIs. Clear, guys? Now, there are few areas where confusion is there. Serialization, deserialization. Okay, JSON object to JSON, JSON to object. That is called serialization, deserialization. Same wordings are there where IO stream serialization and deserialization. One more thing, API. Okay, API called technology API or programming API means it's a library providing base to develop what? Language technology framework application. JDBC API, Servlet API, Spring API, Spring Boot API, right? Next, we have REST API or Web Service API, distributed application whose services can be consumed from what? Different types of remote clients. Different types of remote clients. Are you getting my point there? So context to context, the wordings will change. That's why be careful. You try to use programming API means technology framework language API. REST API or Web Service API means distributed application. Better to say JSON serialization, JSON deserialization. IO stream serialization, IO stream deserialization. So confusion will not be there. Yeah. In software domain, certain terminology change its meaning context to context. JSON serialization is different from what, guys? IO stream serialization. JSON serialization is all about converting Java object data to JSON document, whereas IO stream serialization is all about creating what? Bits and bytes from the object. JSON deserialization is different from what? IO stream deserialization. JSON deserialization is all about converting JSON document into Java class object, whereas IO stream deserialization is all about converting what? Bits and bytes into object. Everyone getting my point? The web service API is nothing but developing provider application as what? Distributed application, having services to consume. Whereas language or technology API is nothing but library acting as base for software applications development, base for developing software application. What is the difference between SOAP based web services and what? RESTful web services. Expect SOAP based web services, RESTful web services. That's good. Protocol. Strictly follows SOAP protocol, simple object access protocol. Follows the REST architecture style, representational state transfer. Representational state transfer. Message format. Always what? XML with a strict to SOAP envelope structure. Schema based envelope and all this stuff. Can use multiple format, JSON, XML, plain text, HTML. JSON is most common. Transport protocol uses HTTP but can also use SMTP, JMS, TCP. Primarily uses what? HTTP. Standards. Highly standardized, doubless security, doubless Okay, atomic transaction, doubleless reliable messaging. Some standards are there. Okay, lightweight, fewer format standard relies on what? HTTP convention. Complexity, more complex, requires WSDL file to describe the service. Simpler, often documented using Open API Swagger, no need of what? WSDL. Or to get more information about web service, documentation is required. But here XML based documentation very complex to understand. This is normal GUI plain text document, very easy to understand. State can be stateful or what? Stateless. Across the multiple requests, provider can remember the state of the client. Stateless, each request from client must contain necessary information. Request 1 remembers only request 1 data. Request 2 remember only request 2 data. In request 2, if you want to carry request 1 data, so you client has to send again from the scratch. Along with the request 2, you should carry request 1 data and request 2 data. Are you getting my point, my dear? Yes, that's good. Performance slower due to XML parsing overhead and envelope structure. Slower due to XML parsing overhead and what? Envelope structure. Because complex XML is there now. Okay, then faster, especially with what? JSON, less overhead. Security. Built-in standards for security, suitable for enterprise level mission official system. Reliance on transport layer security, HTTPS, and custom implementation for what? Extra security. Best use cases, banking payments, gateways, government enterprise application require strict contacts and formal standards. Web mobile application, public APIs, microservices, where speed and flexibility is important, right? Get user slash returns. Okay, this kind of JSON data. Technology is required. JAX WS, JAX RS. Okay. Frameworks required. Apache Access, Apache CFX. Spring REST, Spring Boot REST, REST Easy, RESTless. We have many options are there or not there, guys. Okay. Then we have got what? What is the difference between 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 Spring Boot MVC application and Spring REST application? Primary purpose, build server-side rendered web application, HTML pages generated on server and sent to what? Browser. Build REST API that return what? Data, usually JSON data to what? For client, like mobile application, SPS, okay, and other devices. Are a lot of things are there. Controller type, uses controller. Often request mapping to return view names like JSP theme leaf templates. Uses what? REST controller plus response body to return data directly in HTTP response. No view resolver and view component. Response type typically returns view and model data. Returns raw data, JSON, XML, no view rendering. View layer uses template engines like ThemeLeaf, JSF, FreeMarker for rendering what? HTML. No view layer, data is sent directly to what? Client. Client type, web browser expecting what? Pages. Any client, mobile application, front end application, other back-end services. Anything it can be, boss. Come on. Desktop application, web applications. There is a multiple possibilities are not there. Okay, desktop applications. Okay. Web applications. And many options are there or not there, guys. Example code. Public class my controller at the rate controller. Public class my REST API at the rate REST controller. Come on. Technologies required to develop Servlet JSP. Frameworks, technologies required to develop JAX WS, JAX RS. JAX WS for SOAP based, JAX RS for what? REST for. Frameworks required to develop what? Application. Spring MVC, Spring Boot MVC, JSF. Spring REST, Spring Boot REST, RESTless, REST easy. Multiple options are there or not there? Or I compared once again what? A RESTful web service and what? SOAP based web service. Web application and what? A RESTful web service. Got it, guys? Understood the basic differences between all this stuff, guys? Okay. One thing is clear. If you know MVC flow, RESTful service flow also nothing difference, guys. Only the difference is no view resolver and view component because of what? At the rate response body that is coming automatically. Because of what? At the rate response body that is coming automatically. Look at the flow, guys. Where is this? Session 4. Yeah. Look at the flow diagram. Yeah, all this stuff already discussed, guys. That's not a big thing. Look at the flow diagram. It's based on MVC or flow of execution where view resolver and view components will not be there because at the rate rest control applied on provider, producer or server application automatically applies what? Response body on all the service operations or handler operations method, which makes this method to send what? Generated results directly to what? Client or consumer application from the front controller servlet. This controller does not use view resolver view component towards what? Sending output to client. It directly sends what? Client application because of what? Response body. If I say 100 times also point is same. In multiple places that point has come. The methods in MVC application controller class are called handler method. The methods in the methods REST applications REST controller class are called business method or REST operation or REST methods or endpoint. Out of all these things, endpoint is the best or not there? Out of all these things, endpoints is the best or not there, guys? Spring REST, Spring Boot REST applications, flow of execution. Yeah. Yeah. See, guys, first change is not one client, guys. Different types of clients are allowed or not there. Desktop, web application, Android, iOS application, IoT application, Python, .NET, PHP, React JS, Angular. Are some ready-made tools also there for testing? Postman, Swagger, browser, other applications, Spring MVC, Spring Boot MVC, JSF application, Struts application. Come on. Another RESTful application, one RESTful can be client to another RESTful, another SOAP application. So anything can be taken as client or not there. Okay. Look at the overall diagram, guys.